So, hi everyone. Thank you so much to Annick, to Marcus, to Sushmita. I'm so happy to be here and I've thoroughly enjoyed all the sessions. An apology in advance. I also, like Eleanor, talk very fast. If at any point you would like me to slow down, please tell me to. I will read, which helps, I find, in the pacing. So just to give you a little bit of background, I won't go over the bio again. I study painting and printmaking. I'm based in Delhi. I'm also an amateur astronomer. I'm an eclipse chaser. And a lot of the work is at the intersection of art and science. I'm not going to be sharing a lot of work, actually just the one, but just to give you a bit of a background. 12 years ago, I began a project with amateur astronomers in Delhi. Beginning as a form of collective investigation, stories, conversations, and histories came together in a slowly building chronicle of this almost obsessive group of people whose lives have been transformed by the night sky. So as part of this research, I have traveled across the country, with amateur astronomers, each trip focused on a stellar event or site. And as this work has developed, I have become increasingly conscious of the role of observation and the field or the site in my practice. And I found that these modes have been very useful in the exploration of the relationships between the human and the non-human. And for me, in my work, this brings up several questions. How do we construct our environment? How does the environment in turn construct us? What is the position of the observer, the amateur astronomer, or the artist? How do we inhabit the planet? How do we place our processes and methodologies within the frame of the vast and varied histories and techniques of technologies of observation, of making sense, of reading, of apprehending the Earth and the universe that we're part of, all the while being aware of our own limitations and our own positions? So the work I'm going to share with you today is brand new. It's actually only been shown a couple of times. It's called 100,000 Suns, and it's a 4-channel film that brings into conversation the geometry of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, alongside conjunctions of event and site. 100,000 Suns is another kind of rendering of the Sun. Assembled from data both historical and contemporary, it foregrounds the reality that the site, the observer, the methods of observation and collection produces multiple readings and avatars of data. So over the past year, I was invited to be the artist in residence at the Open Data Institute in London. And of the research that was undertaken at this time, the result of which is this work. One of the things that really stayed with me was the idea of the digital twin, which many of you may already know. But for those of you who don't, very basically put, a digital twin is a virtual representation that serves as a real-time digital counterpart of a physical object or system, right? And there are conversations at the moment about the possibility of creating a digital twin of the Earth. So on a planetary scale, digital twinning starts with the presumption that something like our planet is essentially knowable, which is interesting and problematic in equal parts, right? Because it presumes that the Earth's complex and very entangled relationships can be somehow programmed and digitally rendered without bias. So 100,000 Suns is not really an alternative to the idea of a digital twin, as it is a more speculative, metaphoric, deliberately discrete assemblage of ways in which we have recorded and observed the Sun over a period of 120 years. And among many things I was trying to push against was this idea of data as being detached, disinterested, or neutral. And for me, some of the important focal points, in fact, were that data is inherently collaborative, it is collective, material, and crucially, it is human. So the inspiration or the focus, if you like, for 100,000 Suns is a very specific space. It's a physical space or a site in the south of India. The Kodaikanal Solar Observatory, which was established in 1899 as a solar physics observatory, when it took over the observational activities of the Madras Observatory, which was founded in its turn by the British East India Company in 1786 to promote the knowledge of astronomy, geography, and navigation in India. And observations of the Sun began at the Kodaikanal Observatory from the early 1900s. And today, the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory is run by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics out of Bangalore and is one of only the few observatories in the world that has over 100 years of data on the Sun. And every day, weather permitting, since 1904, the staff at the observatory have been taking pictures and recording images of our Sun. And I've been drawn to this site for many years. And finally, in 2019, to coincide with an annular eclipse, I was able to plan an expedition to this amazing space. So if we think about it, more than 100 years of data is 11 solar cycles, or more than 157,000 distinct portraits of our nearest star. And these observations range from hand-drawn sunspots on small discs of paper, glass photographic plates, to H-alpha and calcium K images. Each of these tens of thousands of suns are archetypes in a sense, each a conjunction of direct observation and experience on one hand and information and data on the other. And the work that is developed out of this visit has looked at the archives of the sun held at the KSO alongside my own data, videos, interviews, images collected during past eclipse chases, alongside data that NASA's Scientific Visualization Studio and the Solar Dynamics Observatory has made available in the public domain. So 100,000 suns brings us the sun observed by hand, by pencil, by light, by photographic emulsion, glass, darkroom, paper, voice, and memory. And the work consists of 4 paradigms, which each exploring a different dimension of the sun through separate digital channels. So what I'd like to do now is to very briefly show you the 4 channels in pairs. I won't talk over the work except the first one, because then I will be exactly 18 minutes, so that's good. So we'll just play this one, and I will tell you a little bit about it. So we're looking now at paradigms 1 and 2. On the left, one second, on the left, we're looking at drawings of the sun, and these are drawings of the solar disk which were created by observers who remain anonymous between 1902 and 1904. And in his book, Observing by Hand, Sketching Nebulae in the 19th Century, the historian of science Omar Nasim delves specifically into the relationship between the observer, the object, and the instrument used to record, which in this case is the hand. And he talks about how each drawing is a composite of information derived from many different days and nights of work. And I quote, "This slowing down in the procedure of observation resulted in an extended, protracted, and continuous gaze on a faint, barely visible object. Drawing the sun explores the nature of drawing when faced with an object that is not only unfamiliar, but one in most cases was also difficult to understand, to see, and to draw." And on the right, we're talking about twin suns, which are glass plates that are in the archives of the KSO. So I apologize for the color. It shouldn't look like this. Just imagine it much more highly saturated. Paradigm 3 and 4. Paradigm 3 is about the site. It's about the history of the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory, where for the staff, as I said, observing the sun literally runs in the family. And there is a sense of continuity, of connection, of ritual and observance that is very hard to describe. Just one example, Devendran, who has been a technical assistant at the KSO for many years, is the 3rd generation in his family to be observing the sun. Devendran's grandfather, Parthasarthi, joined the observatory in 1900, a year after it relocated from Chennai, the state capital, to Kodaikanal, and his son Rajesh is also an astronomer at KSO. And paradigm 4 is the eclipse. So as I said, I visited the observatory during a solar eclipse, and the observatory has this incredible 60-meter tunnel telescope, which is underground. So what I did was that I recorded the eclipse in the tunnel. And the amazing thing is that they have a 60-inch coleostat mirror at the top, which directs the sunlight through this tunnel. And then what happens is the light suddenly makes the dust visible, or you could argue that the dust makes the light visible, depending on your point of view. So that is the fourth channel, and then it's overlaid with the voices of eclipse chasers, or people who have dedicated their lives to standing in the shadow of the moon. So I won't talk over this one because, well,
looked at that eclipse and I said, God, that's me. Because I had never seen such intensity in black. I'd never seen the black of the moon with the corona on its side was speaking to me far more than the grandeur of the corona. It was telling me in its intenseness about how I felt, but how I cannot say it. It helped me suddenly find articulation. I realized that what was happening out there in the immediate cosmos was actually a superset. And we were one subset of it, and there's probably a greater subset below us. It kind of emphasized that the lay of the land, how things kind of doubly emphasized the fractal nature of the universe. But what was happening there, those things speaking volumes, was in fact actually reflecting a consciousness whose own thoughts were bound by the parameters of darkness, which actually is not there. The moon is not dark, right? It's just in the background of the sun. It becomes the most intense darkness once seen. I've never seen a black shining. I mean, that seems to be a contradiction of terms. Can we paint a black like that? No. Can we talk about it? I don't even think you can articulate it. Well, at the end of the day, that eclipse represents, in many ways, a slant, a conceptual slant of the way we are.
So the distances between these collections of data are layered and complex, right? The hand-drawn drawings on the left, the glass photographic plates, were all collected at a time when the observatory was still an instrument of colonial rule. And in the years leading up to the transfer of equipment from Madras to Kodaikanal, India witnessed the Great Famine of 1876 to 1878 under Crown rule. And Eleanor mentioned yesterday this amazing project at the Whipple Museum. And there's an amazing article there which is referenced in that channel. I don't know if you were able to read the text, but it talks about the link between astronomy and famine, or actually the role that astronomy played in the exercise of empire. And what happened is, sorry? No. Yeah. So what the article mentions actually is that the project to monitor sunspot activity from Dehradun and later Kodaikanal began in 1878 and was exported to India from Britain by the editor of the journal Nature, Norman Lockyer, who believed that a causal link had been found between sunspot activity and famine, right? Or rather, weather patterns on Earth. And as the historian of science Saman Sharma has said, and I quote, "The British government in India built a new solar physics observatory in southern India, and it credited the idea that you could correlate the behavior of the sun with famine," end quote. So this was, of course, a fantasy of control, right? To try and predict the behavior of an object that is far beyond the empire's vantage point rather than looking to your own position. But of course, the KSO today is a very, very different space. It is a different site. The science it produces, the scientists who continue to steward the data, contribute to the theoretical numerical modeling and observational research on the workings of the sun. But I think I'm interested in this two-way observation. One, of course, is the observations themselves in terms of this material which the KSO holds, which is literally actually voicing observers past. But what happens also then when you take the materiality of these distinct observations of the sun seriously, right? With an instrument like a pencil or material like paper, you see new ways of mark making, representing, gesturing, and even positioning the object, both in its observed form, but also in the body of the observer. And in a very different register, when you shift from paper to glass plate, the material is both light and the photographic emulsion on the glass. And of course, then there is the observatory itself, as it is today, or rather as it was when I observed from it. And the observatory then is translated through me. I enter this material and I look at it mediated through the digital, and then I add to it further through other modes of observation. And that's it. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much.